Hello everyone, I'm Kathleen Pelly. Welcome to the special omnibus edition of Journey with Story, where you can listen to all of this month's episodes in one single sitting. Oh, mums and dads, and all of you grown-ups, you might be interested in a little handout that I have available on my website that gives you lots of tips on raising kids who love to read. Of course, I know you're interested in that because you're already sharing this storytelling podcast with your little ones. So go to www.journeywithstory.com and click on the Resources tab at the top. And you can also find the link in our episode notes. Now, let's take an omnibus journey with story. Let's take a journey with the king who wanted to touch the moon. Once there lived a king who loved to gaze at the moon. He became so fascinated by its bright silvery face that he began to feel a great longing to touch it. The king decided to have a tower built so that he could climb up and touch the moon. He called for the royal carpenter and asked him to build it. "But your majesty, can't be done," exclaimed the carpenter. "Nonsense," roared the king. "Don't ever say can't to me. I'm the king, and I command it. Build me a tower so that I can touch the moon. Or you can build a dungeon, and I'll have you locked up inside it." The carpenter hurried off to his workshop to design a tower that would please the king and save himself from being locked in a dungeon. Next day, he returned to the palace. "I suggest that we collect wooden chests and pile them on top of each other to make a tower, your majesty," he said. "Then you can climb up and touch the moon." The king was very pleased. "Wonderful idea," he said. "Get started straight away." A message was sent around the kingdom, asking people to bring their wooden chests so that the king could touch the moon. People all over the land emptied their chests of drawers, loaded them onto carts, and brought them to the palace. As the chests arrived, the carpenter and his assistants carefully piled them on top of each other to make a tower. Up and up the tower grew, higher than the palace roof, higher than the tallest mahogany tree, up and up towards the clouds. However, when every chest had been added to the tower, it was still far too short to reach the moon. "We can't build it any higher, your majesty," said the carpenter. "There aren't any more chests." "Nonsense," roared the king. "Don't say can't to me. Bring all the chests in the palace and put them on top." So everyone in the palace ran around hunting for chests. The queen even gave out the golden chest of drawers in her own bedroom to add to the tower, so that the king could climb up and touch them on. But still, the tower wasn't high enough. "We've used every chest in the land, Your Majesty," said the carpenter. "But it just can't be done." "Nonsense," roared the king. "Don't say can't to me. Cut down all the trees in the kingdom and use the wood to build more." The carpenter did not want to refuse the king, so he had all the mahogany trees and the palm trees and the calabash trees and every other tree in the kingdom cut down. And all the carpenters in the land sawed and hammered for a week to make the wood into chests. When they were finished, the chests were brought to the palace and lifted one by one to the top of the tower. Then at last the king, who wanted to touch the moon, began to climb it. Up and up the king climbed, higher than the palace roof, higher than the tallest mahogany tree had been, up and up through the clouds and into the sky. Finally, he got to the top of the tower and saw the bright silvery moon above him. "What a fool that carpenter was to say this couldn't be done," he thought to himself. "I can do anything I want. I'm the king." But when he stretched out a hand towards the moon, his fingertips couldn't quite reach it. He stood on tiptoe and tried again. But to his dismay, the tower was still too short. "Can you touch the moon yet?" called the queen from far below. "No," replied the king. "Send up one more chest." "It can't be done, Your Majesty," shouted the carpenter. "There aren't any more chests. Every stick of wood has been used up." "Nonsense," roared the king, who wanted to touch the moon. "Don't say can't to me. Take a chest from the bottom and send it up at once." The carpenter listened in astonishment, but he didn't want to disobey the king in case he ended up in a dungeon. So he told his assistants to pull out a chest from the bottom of the tower. The assistants took hold of a chest and pulled. They tugged and tugged, this way a little, that way a bit, until at last the chest came out from the bottom of the pile. Suddenly, the tower collapsed with a deafening crash. All the chests came tumbling down until there was nothing left but an enormous heap of broken wood. On top of the heap sat the king, who couldn't touch the moon, rubbing a bump on his head. And high, high above, the bright, silvery moon gazed down on it all, without even blinking an eye. let's take a journey with the Clumsy Beauty and her ants. There was once a poor widow with a daughter named Ursula, who was as beautiful as a spring day, but as clumsy as could be. The poor mother was the most industrious person in the town, and was a particularly good hand at the spinning wheel. It was her greatest wish that her daughter should be as handy as herself, so that she would find a good husband. But any work Ursula touched seemed to tangle or break in her fingers at once. One morning, things were very bad, for Ursula had tried her hand at spinning once again, and once again had tangled the thread. Her mother was giving her a good scolding, when who should be riding by their small farm but the king's own son. Oh dear, good woman," he said. "You must have a very bad child to make you scold so terribly. Sure it can't be this handsome girl who's vexed you." Now, the widow knew the prince was in need of a wife, and she quickly devised a plan. "Oh, please your majesty, not at all," she said. "I was only checking her for working herself too much. Would your majesty believe it? She spins 3 pounds of flax in a day, weaves it into linen the next, and makes it all into shirts the day after." "Oh, gracious," said the prince, "then she's the very lady that will catch my mother's eye, for she herself is the greatest spinner in the kingdom. Will you fetch your daughter's bonnet and cloak, please, madam, and set her behind me on my horse? Why, my mother will be so delighted with her that perhaps she'll allow us to marry within the week. That is, of course, if the young lady herself is agreeable." Well, the woman bundled Ursula into her bonnet and cloak and sent her off with the prince, before the girl could even protest. But as they rode back to the castle together, the prince was so solicitous and kind that she almost forgot her fear of being found out. When they arrived at the castle, the queen came out to meet her son, and was almost struck dumb when she saw a young country girl sitting behind him. But when they dismounted, and she saw the girl's handsome face and heard about her incredible feats of spinning, her feelings changed quite quickly. Ursula trembled under the queen's gaze, but the prince whispered in her ear that if she didn't object to becoming his wife, she should strive to please his mother. So she smiled bravely and made a wobbly curtsy. That evening they all dined together, and the prince and Ursula were getting fonder and fonder of one another, but the thought of spinning still sent a chill to her heart. And sure enough, after they had feasted, the queen led Ursula to a beautiful bedroom, pointed to a heap of fine flax in the corner, and said, "You may begin as soon as you like tomorrow morning, and I'll expect to see these 3 pounds in nice thread the morning after." Then she bid Ursula good night. The poor girl slept little that night, and when she was left alone the next morning, she began her spinning with a heavy heart. Though she had a nice mahogany wheel and the finest flax she'd ever seen, the thread seemed to break every time she touched it. One moment it was as fine as a cobweb, and the next as coarse as wool. At last she pushed her chair back, let her hands fall into her lap, and burst out crying. Just then, a small old woman with surprisingly big feet appeared before her, as if out of nowhere, and said,
"Ah, what ails you, handsome girl?"
"Oh," cried Ursula, "haven't I all that flax to spin before tomorrow morning? And I'll never be able to have even 5 yards of fine thread of it put together."
"And would you think it bad to ask poor Cully Cushmore to your wedding with the young prince? If you promise to invite me, all 3 pounds of your flax will be made into the finest of thread while you're taking your sleep tonight."
Ursula was overjoyed. "Ah, indeed you must be there and welcome, and I'll honour you all the days of your life."
"Ah, very well,"
said Collie Cushmore.
"Stay in your room till tea time, and then tell the Queen she may come in for her thread as early as she likes tomorrow morning."
Ursula did as she said, and the old woman was as good as her promise. The next morning, Ursula woke to find thread finer and evener than the gut of fly fishers. "Ah, what a brave girl!" cried the Queen. "I'll get my own mahogany loom brought to you, but you needn't do anything more today. Work and rest, that's my motto. Tomorrow you'll weave all this thread, and who knows what might happen," she added with a smile. So Ursula spent another day with the prince, and she was so happy in his company that she almost forgot the task ahead of her. But the next morning, when she sat down at the Queen's loom, she was even more frightened than before. Her trembling fingers couldn't even put the warp in the gears, nor use the shuttle. She was sitting there in the greatest grief, when a little old woman with mightily wide hips suddenly appeared before her. She said her name was Colliach Crummonmore, and she offered the same bargain as Colliach Cushmore. Eagerly Ursula accepted, and great was the Queen's pleasure the next morning when Ursula showed her linen, as fine and white as the finest paper. "Ah, what a darling girl," said the Queen. "Take your ease with the ladies and gentlemen today, and if you have all this made into nice shirts tomorrow, you may present one of them to my son and be married to him out of my hand." Oh, how poor Ursula trembled the next day as she sat with scissors, needle and thread in hand. She was so near the prince now, and yet maybe would soon be so far from him. But she waited patiently till a minute after noon. An old woman with a big red nose appeared before her. The woman introduced herself as Colliach Shronmorrua, and she made the same offer as the 2 before her. Ursula accepted with relief. And sure enough, when the Queen paid her an early visit the next morning, there were a dozen fine shirts lying on the table. The wedding took place a few days later, and it was exceedingly grand. Ursula's mother was there along with the rest, and at the wedding dinner the Queen could talk of nothing but the lovely shirts and how happy she and the bride would be after the honeymoon, when they would be spinning and weaving and sewing shirts without end. The bridegroom didn't much like the conversation, and the bride liked it less. But before either could interject, a footman came up to the head of the table and said to the bride,
Your ladyship's Aunt Collia Cushmore bade me ask if she might come in. The bride blushed and wished she were 7 miles under the floor, but she nodded, and the prince said, Tell Mrs. Cushmore that any relation of my bride's will always be heartily welcome, wherever she and I are. In came the woman with the big foot, and she got a seat near the queen. But the queen, who didn't like the interruption, soon asked, rather spitefully, Dear madam, what's the reason your foot is so big? Faith, your majesty, said Collia Cushmore, I was standing almost all my life at the spinning wheel, and that's the reason. I declare to you, my darling, said the prince, horrified, I'll never allow you to spend 1 hour at the same spinning wheel. A little while later the footman approached again and said, Your ladyship's Aunt Collia Crommenmore wishes to come in, if you have no objection. The prince and Ursula said she was welcome, and she took her seat and drank healths aplenty to the company. But after a minute the queen said, May I ask, madam, why you're so wide halfway between the head and the feet? That, your majesty, is owing to sitting all my life at the loom, said Collia Crommenmore. Be my sceptre, said the prince, my wife shall never sit there an hour. Finally the footman approached again and said, Your ladyship's Aunt Collia Shron is asking leave to come into the banquet. Again the bride and bridegroom said she was welcome, and in came the old woman and settled herself at the table. Madam, said the queen, will you tell us, if you please, why your nose is so big and red? Truth, your majesty, my head was bent down over the stitching all my life, and all the blood in my body ran into my nose, said Collia Shron Morua. My darling, said the prince in all seriousness to Ursula, if I ever see a needle in your hand, I'll run 100 miles from you. And in this way the clumsy Ursula was relieved of spinning work for the rest of her life, and she and the prince were happily married at last. Let's take a journey with the Kildare Pooka. Once upon a time, there was a big manor house in County Kildare, whose owner was often out of the country on business. When he was away, the servants were left alone to keep up the house. And sometimes they would let things go a bit more than they would have if their master had been home. But as if the kitchen were rebelling against being left in disarray, the servants would often hear at night a frightful banging of the kitchen door and clattering of fire irons, pots, plates, and dishes. The longer this went on, the more terrified they all became, and none of them dared to enter the kitchen after the fire had died down at night. One evening, they sat up ever so long by the fire, however, telling each other stories about ghosts and fairies.
They talked so long that the little scullery boy fell asleep right there, curled in the hearth, and he did not wake when they all tramped off to bed. Later, after they were all gone, he was woken by the noise of the kitchen door opening. Startled and suddenly afraid, he peeped out from the hearth, and what should he see but a big donkey standing and yawning before the dying fire. The boy was about to come out from his hiding place and lead the animal back to the barn when he saw it look around, scratch its ears and say, "I may as well begin first as last." The poor boy's teeth began to chatter, for now he knew this was no ordinary donkey, but a Pooka. "Oh, now he's going to eat me, surely," he thought. But the Pooka had something else to do. He stirred the fire, and then he brought in a pail of water from the pump and filled a big pot, which he put on the fire. After that, he lay down before the fire so close by the scullery boy that he dared not breathe. At last the pot boiled, and the Pooka rose again and began a flurry of activity. There wasn't a plate or dish or a spoon in that kitchen that he didn't fetch and put into the pot. He washed and dried the whole set, as well as any kitchen maid, and put them all up on the shelves again. Then he gave the floor a good and thorough sweeping. The last thing he did was to rake up the fire, and finally he walked out, just as nonchalantly as he had come, giving the door a good slam as he went. Well, there was a hullabaloo the next morning when the poor scullery boy told his story. The servants could talk of nothing else the whole day. One said one thing, another said another, but one lazy scullery girl said the wittiest thing of all. "Well," says she, "if the Pooka does be cleaning up everything that way when we're asleep, what should we be slaving ourselves for doing his work?" So said, so done. Not a bit of a plate or dish saw a drop of water that evening, and not a broom was laid to the floor. Everyone went to bed soon after sundown. Next morning, everything was as fine in the kitchen, and the Lord Mayor might have eaten his dinner off the flagstones. It was a great relief to the servants, and everything went well until the scullery boy, who was now proud of his adventure and had forgotten all his fear, declared that he would stay up one night and have a chat with the Pooka. He waited by the fire in plain sight this time, and to tell the truth, he was a little daunted when the door was thrown open and the Pooka appeared. But he plucked up his courage and said, "Good evening, sir." Good evening," said the Pooka. "If it isn't taking a liberty," said the boy, "might I ask who you are and why you are so kind as to do half of the day's work for us every night?" No liberty at all," said the Pooka. "I'll tell you, and willingly. I was a servant in the time of your master's father, and was the laziest rogue that ever was clothed and fed. So when my time came for the other world, this is the punishment that was laid upon me, to come here and do all this labour every night, and then go out and sleep in the cold. It isn't so bad in fine weather, but If you only knew what it is to stand with your head between your legs, facing a storm, from midnight to sunrise on a bleak winter night." The boy was moved, and he said, "Oh, is there nothing we could do for your comfort, my poor fellow?" "Ah, well, I don't know," says the Pooka, "but I think a good quilted coat would help to keep the life in me on those long nights." "Ah, why then we'd be the ungratefullest of all people if we didn't feel for you and give you a coat," said the boy. So, the next night, the boy waited for the Pooka again, and delighted the creature by holding up a fine warm horse's coat before him. Between the two of them, they got the Pooka's 4 legs into the coat and buttoned it down the breast and the belly, and he was so pleased that he walked up to the glass to see how he looked. "Well," he said at last, "I've a long road to travel tonight, and I am much obliged to you and your fellow servants. You have made me happy at last. Good night to you." As he was walking out, the boy cried, "Wait! Sure you're going too soon. What about the washing and the sweeping?" "Ah," said the Pooka, "you may tell the others that they must now get their turn. My punishment was to last until I was thought worthy of a reward for the way I had done my duty. Now you'll see me no more." And no more they did, and right sorry they were for having been in such a hurry to reward that Pooka. Now, let's take a journey with the Foolish Man. Guru Swami and his wife lived in the village. Oh, they were foolish. And, oh, they were stubborn. So foolish and so stubborn, in fact, that they would argue all night over which one of them was the bigger fool. One of their neighbours could not bear the noise they made any longer. He went up to them to try and settle the argument once and for all. "Aye, neither of you is the biggest fool in the world. There are much bigger fools out there. If you don't believe me, go and see for yourselves." Guru Swami's wife, being perhaps the more stubborn of the two, did not believe their neighbour and saw no reason to find out. But Guru Swami thought all night about what the man had said. The next morning, tying his turban firmly on his head, he set out to see the world. He wanted to find out for himself if what their neighbour had said was true. He wandered around from village to village, asking about the fools who lived there. Finally, someone told him about an entire village of idiots. When he went there, he found the villagers running around, carrying empty baskets in and out of their houses. "What are you doing?" he asked. "Oh," explained one villager, wearily mopping his brow, "it is a nice hot day and the sun is shining bright, but our houses are dark, even at midday, so we're trying to gather the sunlight in baskets to light up our homes, but it does not seem to be working very well." Guru Swami looked at their houses and thought quickly. "Oh, that's easy," he said. "If you pay me, I will fill your houses with light." The tired villagers quickly agreed. They paid him 100 rupees. Guru Swami went into their houses and opened all the doors and windows. Light soon poured into the houses. The villagers bowed down and touched his feet in respect. As he walked on, Guru Swami came to another curious sight. Several men, all of whom were tall, hefty, and bulging with muscles, were trying to get the trunk of a tree into a house through a doorway that was far too small for it. They pushed and shoved, twisted and turned, but the trunk just would not go through. Finally, they picked it up and ran into the doorway so hard that the entire house was in danger of falling down. Guru Swami offered to help if they were willing to pay him. They agreed. Guru Swami found that the tree trunk was to be used to make a wooden altar and furniture for the house. He arranged for the trunk to be sawed into smaller pieces, which were then carried into the house easily. As he walked further, he came upon an even stranger sight. An old woman was tugging and pulling at a buffalo, trying to coax it to climb up onto the roof of her house. She even beat it, but the buffalo refused to budge. Amma, Guru Swami addressed the old woman respectfully. Why do you want the buffalo to climb up onto the roof? Over the years, sand has collected on the roof, and now a tuft of fresh grass is growing there. But this stupid buffalo will not move, and so cannot eat it, replied the woman in exasperation. I will arrange to feed it for a few rupees, said Guru Swami, smiling broadly. The woman agreed. Guru Swami climbed up onto the roof, cut the grass, and gave it to the buffalo to eat. The grateful woman gave him some money. It was now evening. As Guru Swami passed an open doorway, he heard voices rising in anger. A husband and his wife were arguing about whose turn it was to shut the door. It's your turn, shouted the husband. No, it isn't, responded the wife furiously. You opened it, so you shut it. This went on until both husband and wife were quite hoarse. Finally, the husband said, Well, neither of us can sleep unless we end this argument, so let's settle on another way. The first one who moves or speaks will have to shut the door. Do you agree? Yes, said the wife firmly. And then there was complete silence. Guru Swami waited for a while before tiptoeing through the doorway and entering the house. He found the couple in bed with their arms crossed, glaring at each other. Through the corner of their eyes, they saw him, but they did not speak a word. Instead, they continued to challenge each other with their stares. Guru Swami walked around the room, examining everything in it. Neither husband nor wife said a word or moved. Guru Swami found a beautifully carved box in a drawer. It looked valuable. He opened it and found that it was full of money, their life savings. "Fate must have led me here for a reason," said Guru Swami to the couple. "If neither of you has any objection, perhaps I should take this home with me. What do you say?" Still, the husband and wife neither moved nor spoke. Guru Swami picked up the box and carried it out. The quarrelsome couple, not wanting to lose the argument, let him walk out of their home without saying a word. But a moment later, he heard them shouting at each other. "You spoke first, so you shut the door." By this time, Guru Swami had realized that he was certainly much smarter than he had thought. And that, he realized too, was a good thing. He went home quite pleased with his newfound wealth and wisdom, stopped arguing with his wife, and lived happily for the rest of his life.
I hope you enjoyed this special omnibus edition of Journey with Story. And don't forget, if you had a favourite story, do let us know. Just go to www.journeywithstory.com, click on the Contact Us, and fill in the form. And if you want to be considered for a shout out on the show, send us your drawings there too. Click on Contact Us, fill in the form, and attach your drawing there. You can also see the link in our episode notes. Cheerio then. Join me next time for Journey with Story. Music and post-production was by Colette Jonas.